Okay, it's Lamentor. I'm going to do a supplemental lesson on the one I did earlier because I think the concept of triads and working with key signatures and things like that sometimes gets a little hairy and maybe a little confusing. So what I'm going to do is simply explain a background behind this exercise, and then I'm going to do it a little bit more so maybe you can see it a little better. And I'm plugged in so you can hear it now. So I'll get started by saying that we're playing in C major. So if we want to build a C major chord, a C major triad, meaning it's just a major chord. So there's 3 notes that we have to get in this chord, and those 3 notes are going to be your 1, or your tones are going to be your 1, your 3, and your 5. So it'll be C, E, and G. So if we spell out the C major scale, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And then we end up on C again as an octave. So what we want to do is start with C. We're going to skip a note, and then we get E. That's our third. And we skip another note, and we get G, and that's our fifth. So if we go counting up, starting on C, we have 1, D is 2, E is 3. So 1 and 3. Skip D in the middle. Skip that second note. And then starting from E, we have E, F, skipping F and going to G. So that's our fifth. 1, 3, and 5. That's how you're going to build major root position triads, at least. But those notes are going to, you can use those again in all sorts of different inversions and things. And that's what we want to kind of talk about today. Sorry, I'm moving my computer around so you see my hand. What we'll kind of get into then is this exercise once more, and I kind of explain it. So if we're playing in C major and we want a C major triad, again we have C, E, and G. So the lowest note we can play in the key of C is E, which is this low E here. But to keep the chord and the intervals tight, like we're just walking up a scale, you have to build the chords a certain way for this exercise. Like I said before, you could still play this E in a C major chord. You can play E, and then you can play C, and then you can play another E, and you can add a G. But that isn't the tightest voicing we can get with the lowest note we can play. So we're going to look at G, because G allows us to go G, A, B, C, D, E. So that is the tightest voicing we can get with the lowest pitch we can get on the guitar for C major. Even if we're talking about E major, it's going to be difficult to get a really tight voicing even with E major, even though the guitar, the lowest note is E. Because we look at that, we have to have E, G sharp, and then we have to have a B. So we'd have to have E followed by a G sharp, which would be here, and then a B, which would be here. So we can't play even in E major triad starting on the lowest note. Now you can do these other shapes, but what's going on is you've got an E followed by your B, followed by an octave E, and then you put your fifth here, or your third, sorry, your G sharp. That's not what we want to do in this exercise. We really want to focus on getting as tight a voicing as we possibly can without skipping around and repeating tones. And we want to keep it on 3 strings, so that's what the 3 string set or 4 string sets are. So we stay with the E, A, and the D string, and we want to keep it as tight as we can. So again, we'll go back to C. So we've got G, our fifth, followed by C, because that's the next note if you're walking through the scale. C, and then E. And then we move up. Here's C, so C, or G, C, E. So our next note is going to be C. We're going to look for C, and here's C right here on the 8th fret. C, E, G. So there's our root position. E, G, C. and I hope people are kind of seeing. I hope you're seeing how that kind of works. You want to keep the voicing in line. So if you're starting on C, the next note up has to be E, and then the next note up from that has to be G. Likewise, if you're starting on E, the next note up from that has to be G, and then the next note up from G has to be C. And then if you're starting on G, the next note has to be C, and the next note after C has to be E. It's just for this exercise. It doesn't, that's not something I want people to limit themselves to doing. You have to think, well, root position chords are only going to be C, then E, then G. No, that's wrong. It just means that there's a C in the bass, and a first inversion chord means that there's a E in the bass in this case, first for C major, and then likewise for a second inversion chord of a C major chord, the G is going to be in A. The fifth is in the bass. That's all that means. So this technically, if we play this low E and we skip up to, let's put the C here, and we'll add a G here. We'll play it like this. That is a C first inversion chord because there's an E in the bass. That's how I look at it. Again, I'm a classical guitar player, so we look at theory maybe a little different than some people. Maybe not. It's really all in the end. It's the same stuff. We just have different terminology than most. I study a lot of Baroque in music, and I love the Romantic period. So the terminology with Western music is studying Western music in that sense. That's the language. When you get into jazz chords and building chords and playing within the jazz idiom, they're going to have different concepts and different names for things, and that's all fine. And it's really, in the end, it's the same thing. They're just using a more contemporary language, and to be honest with you, really it works better in my opinion. But just for this case, I'm teaching root first and second inversion chords. So get back to this exercise again. We'll start on the second string set, which is A, D, and G. So the lowest pitch we can play within the key of C for a C major triad is C, because there's no A, there's no B flat or B. So C, the next note, C, D, E, there's our third, and we'll play the G open because we want to use all three strings within the string set. So we have C, E, and G. So if we're on C, the next note we want to find for the next inversion is going to be E. So here's our E right here. So we have E, G, and C. So E on the 7th, G on the 5, C on the 5. And then the next note after E, we want to find G. G, C, and E. And we can add an E in the bass if we want. So I don't want to get it too confusing. So those are just inversions. And you can do that with any chord. Pick any chord that's in start with C major. That's the easiest you can think. You don't have to worry about sharps and flats in that particular key. But do that with all the chords, diatonic chords you can. So what I mean by that, so if we say, and we're starting on C here, next chord, our 2 chord, if this is our 1 chord because we're in the key C, our 2 chord is going to be D. And we want to keep those same notes that are within the major scale, so no sharps and flats, and we want to build them in thirds. So you start on D, skip a note, and then you end up on F, natural, skip a note, and you end up on A. So you just kind of write the scale out and skip a note in between, and just kind of draw a little loop from one note to the next, and just skip the one in between. That's how I usually teach intro students, really young students, on chord theory when we first get started. Just pick a note and then skip the next, and then skip the next one after that. So you're building chords in thirds, and we just want 3 notes. You want your 1, your 3, and your 5. So in the case of C, we have C, E, and G. Now we're in D major, or D minor chord, sorry. D is our 2 chord, so we want D, F natural, A. Let's move it up to E. E is the next note in the C major scale. And building it diatonically, we have E, skip a note, G natural, skip a note, B natural. and so on and so forth. And then you have an F major, a G major chord, A minor, and then a B, like a half diminished or just a diminished chord, whatever you want to call it. And then you end up back on C. So that's a good exercise to do. It's just playing around with those inversions, but it's going to force you to start learning the notes, because you have to find. You can't completely rely on the shapes, and that's one reason why I'm not really showing you the shape. You need to find the notes for yourself, because then it's going to be ingrained in your hand. You get it in your hand, and then it's going to stick because you had to learn it. You had to find it. And if I just give it to you, you know, it's a good way to learn. I think that's a valid way to learn, but I think it has a little more value and it sticks a little more if you have to find the notes. So just write out the scale and then build the chord off of that. But like I said, I would say start in C major and build your inversions off of that. And remember, it's just 1, 3, and 5. And they have to be 1, 3, 5, 3, 5, 1, 5, 1, 3. And then that's root, first inversion, second inversion, and that's the way you need to do it. Now, the next thing you want to do, like I said in the last video, is form those shapes. So we'll start here. I'll just start up right here with the C major. This is the root position in the first string set. So the next thing you want to do is start altering the chord and learning how pitches move, and how when you move a pitch or add a pitch or do anything like that, how it changes the quality of the chord. So the next thing we want to look at is a minor chord. So right now we've got C. And so after you find all these inversions for a key, go back through, play them again, and then play around with the notes within the chord. And it's kind of fun to play around with them, but for right now, let's check out what we've got. We have C, E, and G. Now I want to make it a minor chord. And when you make a chord minor, you want to flat the third of that particular triad. In this case, in C major, and a C major chord, if we want to make it a C minor chord, we flat the E. So we'll have an E flat. So if I'm playing an E natural here on the, looks like the 7th fret of the A string, all I'm going to do is drop it down a half step. So here's C major, C minor. Pretty simple. And that's something that really kind of opens up some doors when you're playing, because then you understand what's going on with moving the notes around, and then you start seeing the notes on the fretboard. You can look at that fret and go, oh, that's an E flat, and that's really important as you begin to study and move through guitar playing. I think every major guitar player, I would say, it's good to be able to read notation, and it's very good to understand chord theory. If you go to study music in a college, like at university level, really what you're going to focus on is tonal harmony. You're going to focus on harmony and building chords. And then you add scales. You do a lot of scales and things too, but you really focus on chords and how to use those chords and how those chords were used in the context of mainly classical music. But it's important to know. I remember I watched an interview with Frank Gambale, and he talked about the importance of being able to read music, and he wouldn't be able to play what he's playing if he couldn't read music. So it's very important to be able to do that. Ted Green, I get a lot of my information from a website, tedgreen.com. I believe it's .com. It's or .org. I don't know. I think it's tedgreen.com. Yes. So it's TEDGE or GREENE, green with an E after the end.com. He's got a lot of information there. I would check out a lot of his chord studies. They're very good to study. Another place on YouTube, I may add a link to it, is David Walleman's YouTube channel. He has probably some of the best lessons you can get on the internet right now, in my opinion. So go check out tedgreen.com and look up David Walleman and guitar playback.com, and there's lots of really good information there. And I'll follow up with this lesson again later.